Hello, everybody. I am Denise Smith of Our Metaverse. Our Metaverse is a community coming together through loving kindness to experience our whole selves together. That's the good and the not so good and the whole self, not just this outside part that we wish everybody could only see the good. But this is where we hold each other and realize we have so much in common with each other, and where we talk about subjects that are not easy and sometimes are easy. Tonight, for me, is a subject that's not so easy. Tonight, we're talking about our relationship with food. And we have an amazing guest speaker who is a beautiful soul who I had the honor of spending 2 years with in meditation teacher training. And with that, she earned my respect, trust, love, and is one of the founding members of Our Metaverse. So tonight, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Diane Rubright. Thank you so much, Diane, for being here
Right,
and taking
right
us.
back at you, right back at you. So I'm just gonna kind of use some slides and we're gonna be real informal, even though I have some slides. I just wanted some references that you can go back to and have at any point, just to mention some other areas that I welcome people reaching out to me on. So I'm gonna mention those too about my background. So,
Want me to start now?
yeah, yeah, that sounds fine. So I'm gonna just fill you in on some other aspects of my background and how I got here, given this talk. So I look at it whether you've had struggles with body or eating or relationship to food, as kind of growing a positive relationship to these things, no matter where you start, no matter what your social conditioning has been, or where you come into this in the world. So that's going to be my focus on a kind of larger level. And then I'm going to leave room at the tail end to talk about specific questions you have, which may relate to eating disorders or disordered eating, or, other things that we'll touch on. We're going to do a number of experiential activities and short guided meditations that relate to the topics. And my hope is that you'll experience some of this stuff firsthand, which sometimes shifts our consciousness. We'll see, right? Okay, so a bit more about my background. Just the next slide. Um, so as Denise said, I met her in the mindfulness meditation teacher certificate program. And yeah, we're back. There we go. And where we learned to teach meditation for a couple of years. But before that, about 30 years before that, I went on my first Vipassana retreat, had no idea really what I was doing. I knew I was going to be sitting in noble silence for 10 days, learning about sensations and maybe learning how to meditate and eating some great food. And well, it was transformative, as you would guess, and has really been sort of the bulk of my practice, and why I take a body-based approach to eating disorders treatment and to trauma therapy. So I'm drawing tonight from a curriculum that was founded by Anne Safi Biasetti called Befriending Your Body program. And there are a whole lot of free guided meditations on her website. So if you put in Befriending Your Body free resources and scroll down, you're going to have a wealth of fairly short, which I like, like 12, 15 minutes long. You can really tuck it in your day. Many of them are body-based, which you'll get a flavor for tonight, somatic practices. Some of them are familiar to you probably already, like loving kindness, body scans, some of those things. So it's a really nice mix, and it's there for you as a free resource. Several times a week, I do two different types of Tai Chi. I do a long form of very slow movement, Tai Chi. And that becomes important because, right, on our topic, it's a form of moving meditation, breath work with movement. And I do one that's a little less that, which is a sword form of Tai Chi. That does involve your brain a lot, so you don't get hurt. It's quite different. But the Tai Chi and the Vipassana, I'd say, are my own practices that are rooted more in meditation and sensation. And then you'll pick this up a little later. I have a background also in second languages and cultures and in philosophy. So, I'll be talking a bit about that mind-body split from a little bit of a philosophical perspective. I'm in private practice in good old St. Paul. I hail from the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul tonight. And I teach here but also have a private practice just a stone's throw away, specializing in eating disorders and trauma. So some other things I like to connect with people on that I'm really passionate about is contemplative walking and hiking. I've done several pilgrimages in the world, but also just I have run a group where we go walk in silence and then we reflect on it. And I'm a big fan of that, and you have the safety of other people you can see in the periphery, but you're out there and you get your space and you're moving in that. And then I'm a movie monster. So if anybody ever wants to connect with me on movies or give me recommendations, I love that. So that's just a little bit about me. And I've been a therapist for a little over 25 years, primarily in those areas I mentioned. So let's take a look at the Buddha and the body. This is our next slide. So here are some of the things we really commonly hear, and I'm thinking a little bit more about Gautama Buddha here, but these are the tenets really of Buddhism related to body as temple, right? So we have that Buddha taught that the body and mind are interdependent, right? And this is going back, 1,500 years, because it really goes back into Hinduism before Buddhism too. And Buddha was influenced by Hinduism, of course. Taught that what I call the body mind, really the body, right? We're putting them together, are an impermanent part of us. And that in Buddhism, when we die, right, we reincarnate, and each lifetime our soul further develops. Buddha taught that the body is both a process as well as a form of awareness. So that's that piece of we talk about impermanence, but with impermanence is change. And we know how fast even our cells regenerate, right? The Buddha taught that body is awareness itself, that this is an intelligence that we can source. And being mindful of body can help us know our emotions and actually know our thoughts too, right? That we can source body first, which I'm going to get you involved in tonight, and let that source emotions and thoughts. Buddha taught that everything we need to know about the world, we can sense through our body, right? That it's a powerful intelligence in its own right. So
Wow.
what happened in the West, right? So let's take a look at the next slide. Right, so we've got thousands of years of that. If we go back into Hinduism, we're going back really far, right? Of many of those tenets. So what happened in the West? Well, we were chucking right along and really not philosophically in the West paying so much attention to this until Rene Descartes. Plato before him to a bit in Western philosophy and thought, but Rene Descartes in the 17th century wrote this book called Meditations on First Philosophy. And in that, really this was new, he made a point to say that there is a dualism between mind and body, that they are in fact separate, and that the mind is a non-physical substance, distinct from the physical body, right? So we have the whole East world really doing something quite different. We have many indigenous cultures throughout the Americas doing something quite different. But in dominant culture, this was positive and it stuck, right? And we have this idea that mind is consciousness and that self-awareness and intelligence, self-awareness is the seed of intelligence, essentially, right? So it's taken us a long time. That's had very much a stronghold, really, until about the last 60 years, where we very, very actively started to challenge this. And our research of the last about 25, 30 years has taken this on. I mean, there are thousands upon thousands of studies challenging the dualism, right? And when you think about the examples that just spring to mind of this error, of Descartes' error, right? We think of things like, I might see someone who's depressed, doesn't maybe have a history even before coming into therapy, just a few months or so, seemingly out of nowhere. Well, I could just trek on down and start treating them with various forms of therapy. But I think that would be remiss, right? Because we also want to check out the mind body connection and make sure they're not suffering from things like hypothyroidism, right? That can often manifest as depression. Um, Anxiety, we all know it before test, right? We get butterflies and all of a sudden we're nauseous or our stomach feels off, right? Or whoosh, someone cuts us off on the highway, right? We are nauseous. We see our life pass before us, right? We often hear that the gut is the second brain next to the cranium with the brain inside, right? And that's because there are so many enteric nerve pathways that it is really the closest thing, our gut, to the brain. It is a very complex system, a sensing system, right? And some time ago, Howard Gardner came out, was kind of made famous by his idea of 9 types of intelligence, and certainly kinetic, spatial, kinetic, feeling into our space, body awareness. I'll talk a little bit about interceptor awareness. We think about kind of that body of work too. But I'm wondering, like, what springs to mind for people when you think about the Descartes error?
About when he suggests that they're not.
Yeah, that they're not connected. Like, what springs to mind is like, no. Here's an example, right?
Well, I see it all the time in medicine, because they're not two standalone individual functions. I mean, yeah, and definitely hormones can affect a lot of processes of the brain. And there is a whole gut hormone system that also affects satiety and things like that too. So that's really an emerging field in medicine for sure.
We'll be talking about that tonight as well. Yeah.
We're not separate, like brain versus, your bones versus your muscles versus your liver, your stomach. I mean, everything is sort of interconnected physiologically, not just through the blood vessels, not just through the nervous system, through hormones, through what you're carrying in your blood vessels and delivering to your cells. So they're not two separate entities, in my opinion. They're not. Well, in my training, they're not.
Yeah, I'm hard pressed to think of many people that still view them as separate these days. But it really colored the early part of my field. And I'm going to talk about how it trails into my field, even until now, about the body being kind of the last thought, ironically, eating disorders work, right? Yeah, great examples. Yeah.
My experience with this is when I was doing lots of business with real estate and working very long hours, I had a constant sciatica issue.
Yeah.
And when I decided to pull back and do what I needed to do and balance life a little bit better, knock on wood, I haven't had a sciatica issue in a long time.
That's interesting.
And so for me, I think mind body through my experience was very particularly focused on where my stress went.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I think about one of the most challenging years of my life. I had a surgery. I had a number of surgeries on initially a greenskeeper's thumb and
Mm.
a pin put in, and I just was miserable for a good 9 months, like just off my game, anxious, down, that feeling like it'll never heal. We're never going to get this right. Another surgery, right? And so something physical and physical pain. I mean, we know this,
Mm.
right? How much physical pain drives people's emotional states
Mhm.
and their need possibly to cope in some maladaptive ways
Mhm.
with that pain, but understandably to try to cope with that pain, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad, my
Mm.
dad is just always complaining of one pain and another pain and another pain, and he's grumpy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you're like, who wouldn't be grumpy if that much on you'd hurt that
Mhm.
all the time? Like,
Yeah. Just the kind of natural irritability that comes with that, just being
yeah,
worn out by it.
yeah,
On every level.
super interesting. Yeah, I think it is an error.
Yeah, yeah, there are some great books back in the early 90s on this of sort of compiling all the research. If anybody's interested, I can send some links to those, but
Right.
we've come a long way in challenging this, I think, and there are remnants around, right? So let's take a look at the next slide. And so, this is sort of the backdrop of this talk, right? The major tenets of mindfulness, that it requires awareness and compassion in order to take flight, and that we're cultivating both things in meditation. And I'm going to argue tonight that the healing path in our relationship with food and body and eating is this very same path. Has some particulars, but it is essentially the two wings, right, in the treatment process. So, what I'm going to do tonight is ask you to grab something to write with. And we're going to do some somatic practices, so body-based mindfulness practices. They're going to be a little different because we are going to listen first to the body. And in order to do this, I'm going to have you have a notebook. And I will say, when I get done with a practice, I'll say, grab your notebook and what did you notice? And that, I want you to kind of go to sensation first in your body. Let your body speak first. And then if you go to emotions or feelings or thoughts or associated images or stories, okay. But I'll cue you, we're going to kind of go to these things first in the body, those sensations, right? Okay. So let's go to the next slide.
This is the one that was after the last one.
Yeah. We're going to the next one. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is grab our piece of paper, and I'd like you to write down this little Likert scale right here. And it may be helpful to refer back to, so you may want the words, right? Overly hungry, hungry, neutral, full, and overly full.
Really hungry, hungry, neutral, full, and overly full.
Yeah, good. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is just tune in for a minute and mark one of these as where you're at right now, right? How would you describe in your body where you are right now? Okay, and now maybe over in the margin, how do you know that? What is your body saying or signaling to let you know that? You just write a few bullets. Okay. I think everybody probably has enough time. Okay, so just keep that nearby. Okay, and we're going to do a little mindfulness here, and then we're going to pick right back up on this. So I'm going to have you, let's see here, let me just get to the right spot. Just kind of settle into your chair and get comfortable. And if you need to adjust a little bit to find what feels the best, and I'll have you just, with this simple practice, just get comfortable and either go to soft gaze or close your eyes. And of course, always, if you need at any point to go from closed to soft gaze or to a fixed point to kind of ground yourself, feel free to do that. I'd like you to just draw your attention for a moment to all the areas that make contact with your body. Feeling your feet touching the ground, and notice how when you press your feet into the ground, you can feel some shifts happen in your ankles and legs. Just move them back and forth and notice your feet relative to your ankles and legs. Maybe noticing how when you press your feet down, there are even shifts in your seat a bit. Now, as you press down again slightly, see if you can follow the line of sensation that builds from your feet and into your legs, up into your back body, and up the length of your spine. As you push in again, notice your spine shifting to an upright and long position. Allow yourself to elongate a bit, and then take your attention back down to the seat beneath you. Inhale, and with each inhalation, press your feet into the ground. Follow that sensation up your legs, your seat, and into your spine. And then exhale. And let your body softly ground down into your seat. Let us repeat this another time or two. So notice your spine shifting up, elongating a bit, and then bring your attention back down to the seat beneath you. With each inhale, pressing your feet into the ground, follow that sensation up into your spine, and then exhale and let your body softly ground down into your seat. I'll let you do this one cycle on your own, remembering to inhale and exhale. Allow your eyes to come open or to soft gaze. Take your notebook. Draw your awareness to what you noticed in this somatic practice. Okay, take just 30 more seconds and just jot your noticings. Okay, so let's unpack this for a minute. What did people notice?
Um, that I haven't thought of my feet in a long time. And
Hello.
then as I worked my way up, how I was sort of the way I was seated, like thinking about my hands and my arms on the desk. I've been working today from home, and holy cow, I was not even realizing how I was activating the muscles in my neck and my back. Like I was like this, and like I had to consciously keep reminding myself to let it drop because I felt like a puppet with my strings pulled tight,
Mhm. Yeah, super noticings. Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and just staying with what you're sharing. And so like tending to that awareness, like, are there some takeaways about what you feel like leaving here that your body needs tonight or tomorrow?
It's a really good reminder for me to I have a lot of chatter in my brain, quite a bit, a lot of anxiety. And if I just pause and think about my feet
Mhm.
and where they've held me up for a while, this body of mine, sort of
Yeah.
like the foundation, right, of my house
Mhm.
I've created here. And to be aware of that grounding effect, but also to bring me back to the present moment
Mhm.
that I'm in to help rein in some of the chatter that I have that is creating sometimes some blocking emotions for me.
Yeah, yeah. So just about a little over a minute we did that, right? Like
Yeah.
noticing and
Mm-hmm.
a reminder that we can come back even to the grounding of our feet. And we could even
Mm-hmm.
stand, right, and accomplish that without even sitting to feel some of that pushing in for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah, thank you. How about you, Denise? And I'm not sure if Wendy's still with us.
I didn't realize that pressing on my feet can be felt all the way up to the bottom of my neck.
Yeah.
Mm.
That was really and in such like such a flowing way.
Ah,
And
yeah.
I didn't, that helped me feel more comfortable in a good posture position.
Mm.
Okay.
Because
Did you
sometimes
feel
I
like
get
that
to,
was sort of naturally it took that position, or how
yeah.
did that?
Well, as it came up and allowed the straightening out, it was, all these different hunches
Oh, yeah.
Mm,
calmly straightened out, as opposed to sometimes when I'm like, okay, shoulders back, now I sit here and
Mm.
it's more forced and uncomfortable. This was like a relaxed. And then when I exhaled into this calmness with it, it was like, oh, that feels so good.
good.
Mm.
Good. Yeah. And how about for you? Like any takeaways that came about from these noticings? Anything your body needs more of or different?
I think activating parts that I don't typically activate would be good.
Okay,
Would be
great.
interesting to try to be aware of a little bit.
Yeah, good, good. Okay. So let's go back here. We're grabbing our
Monroe,
sheet.
are you there? Did you do it?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, hi. Is
Um,
it Sandro? Sandro, what were some of
yeah.
your noticings?
I noticed being able to feel that you're like feeling it all the way up your spine, like feeling what's happening in your toes and noticing that that's actually you're getting that feeling all the way up your whole body was interesting. I never really noticed that before.
Yeah, I remember being surprised doing this too, just what everybody, like, wow, yeah, that reverberation up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And any kind of takeaways for you about from these noticings about anything your body needs more of, or on the sensation end, sometimes we notice tightness or anything for you.
Specifically that I can think of. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just being more aware of the, why you're feeling the way you are. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And similarly, we look at how when one area tenses up, right, it also reverberates out too. We're loosening and bringing in air and right, but it of course can go the other direction too, right? And before we know, our jaws locked up, or right, our neck and back are tense. So we know this stuff all the time. We live it.
Yeah.
Okay. So is Wendy there? Is anybody else there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh,
I wanted
good.
to just pop in. I
Good.
just walked in the door a few minutes ago, so I did not do the exercise.
All right.
But I am
But-
listening. I'm actively listening, and I'm gonna
Okay.
be
Okay.
more, but I'm here. Yeah.
Good. Don't want to overlook anybody. Okay.
Thank you.
We're going back to the slide, Denise, that has the overly, hungry on it. So let's grab this back again, now that we've just spent, a couple minutes doing a somatic practice. I'm going to call them a body-based mindfulness practice. And I'm wondering, in your rating about how you know where you are, is there anything you'd add to this? Is there anything maybe you noticed just from quieting out your body for a minute that you might add about how you know where you're at hunger or fullness wise? And if so, go ahead and just add that on there, write that on your page, right? If something else occurred to you. Okay. So let's just hear from people on what you picked and how you know it.
So I picked neutral.
Okay. Okay. And how is neutral feeling?
And I thought, I'm not craving.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
was that's how I knew it. Like, okay, I'm not like trying to grasp for something.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm comfortable and I'm calm.
Okay. Yeah. Good. So I guess there might be some peace to that.
Peace for sure.
Okay. Good. Yeah. How about other people?
Can I stop share while they share? And then we'll come back.
Yeah.
I wrote neutral also. I said not hurting, as in like usually if I'm full, it kind of hurts. It's just like an uncomfortable feeling. And then also doesn't feel empty.
Okay.
But I can obviously, like, I drink a lot of water, so like I could actually feel the water in my stomach. So that was a weird.
That. Okay. So do you think normally you're aware of that?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty aware of the water because it's like you feel it sloshing, like it's the thing. But I've been having a weird time with hunger recently. It's like I don't know if I'm hungry. I just get up like irritable, and that's like how I can tell. Otherwise, I don't. I definitely know if I'm full, but hungry is kind of like always snacky.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We're going to be talking about that. All right. Thanks for that sharing. Yeah. What others?
Oh, I wasn't sure I was on. I have kind of a complicated relationship actually with food. So I was pretty horribly bulimic when I was in college and part of medical school, actually. Like I was living two different lives. And once you get very deeply in it, it's I guess what I'm trying to say is I can identify with Denise talking about cravings because it is an addiction. And so I'm very aware of two different parts of eating for me, which is the brain part versus the stomach. And so I had to wolf down some food to make it in time here. So I don't feel uncomfortably full, but my body feels like it went in too fast. I like to be more mindful when I'm eating, because when I am, then I'm more in touch with where I am with the food I'm eating. So that felt a little uncomfortable with me, was to kind of check in with my gut. And of course, I just recently had terrible stomach stuff coming back from Belize. So my stomach isn't quite ready for, I think, how quickly and how much I put in it. But my brain is what I'm always kind of checking into. And actually, for me, I'm on medication that helped quite a bit for me. It's an SSRI, cut that craving. So I feel comfortable to end the long-winded answer. Yeah.
Well, and thanks for sharing all that it makes a difference, kind of how much time you have to eat
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of calibrating what comes next. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wendy, I don't know if you'd had enough time to settle to.
I didn't write anything down, but I thought about it,
Okay.
and I am hungry.
Okay.
And because I just am home and am heating up some dinner. And but I was thinking about it, like, how do I know that I'm hungry? And I think a lot of times I am hungry because of the time of day. Like I know, like, oh, it's dinner time, you know.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't eaten dinner yet, and it's late, and I worked longer than I thought I was going to, and
Yeah.
I want to get into Denise's class, and but I know I need to eat, you know. So sometimes I feel like I'm more like timed, like, oh, it's time for breakfast, time for lunch, instead of actually like sitting and feeling like, am I actually hungry? You know, I am hungry right now, but
Okay.
it made me think just in general about
Yeah. 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 There are
eating.
powerful pairings, right?
Mhm.
Powerful pairings with rituals of time of day, and sometimes pairings with place, like popcorn in a movie theater, right? Like pairings with location of foods that go along with things, right? So let's take a look at this, and I'm gonna kind of just briefly kind of compile some research for you about these stations, and I'm gonna invite you to reflect with me a little bit more about it. So we have a very complicated feedback loop that if we eat slowly enough, which is why it's uncomfortable when we don't get a chance to eat slowly enough. And that is literally for our main meals, 15 to 20 minutes. And I gotta say, a lot of times I don't get that, right? I'm whizzing around. But we have this very sophisticated feedback loop that when we're able to more mindfully sit down and eat those meals, those larger meals, we can catch the subtlety of these stations, I'm going to call them, in the body, right? And we're digesting at such a pace that sort of our stomach and our brain get to communicate effectively. So when we're overly hungry, 9 times out of 10, our blood sugar has already dropped. And when we're at this station, we've gone more than 4 hours without eating anything. And people will quickly say to me, well, what about, fasting? And we'll get to that a little later, like the place for intentional fasting. But generally, we don't want to be here, right? When we're overly hungry, we could sprint down the street to eat indiscriminately, right? We need to get food. We don't think a lot about what it is. We get hangry, right? We've all been there. Our anxiety spikes. A lot of times we can go up into hyper arousal. We're spinning, we're revving. It feels toxic a lot of times in the body. If we go too long, we can even get nauseous, right? So we really kind of want to try to avoid this space. And we also, number 5, overly full is also really uncomfortable, right? Sometimes because we ate too fast or ate too much. And the result is we're lethargic. We tend to think about an opportunity to sit on a couch. We tend to forego some things we want to do. We feel uncomfortable in our body, really uncomfortable, like into the belt area, uncomfortable. A lot of times we associate this with Thanksgiving, right? Like our national holiday of overfull. But, most of us, distress after we kind of get to that point. And truth be told, we want to kind of avoid 1 and 5, right? Because they don't feel very good. And 2 is where we want to enter into eating. 2 is hungry, and that means like food's on the brain, little dip in energy, but not like number 1. It usually syncs with time to eat if we're on our timings about eating. We get a rumbling stomach. Some people get a full-on growl. These are robust signs of health. We want those things. We want food on the brain when it's breakfast time, right? And sometimes we get out of the system, out of sync with timings, and we do a reset, right? We do a reset to help people know these signals of hunger and fullness in the body more sharply, punctuated. We want to tighten that up, okay? Neutral is either on the way to full or it's often eating out of emotion, right? So when we're on our way to full and we stop at full, we've passed through neutral. That's where we're like, I need a little bit more food. This doesn't quite do it. I need to go back for seconds. I think I will get a little more of this. Or I didn't completely like my meal. Now I'm going to make a half sandwich, right? We're not quite full yet. So we call that neutral on the way, right, to full. But a lot of times emotional eating when we're really stressed and we only ate an hour ago and all of a sudden we're foraging for food, we're looking, and it's not just anything that we'll do, it's particular types of our food that we like when we have cravings. We're eating out of neutral. We call that eating out of neutral. So the starting point is neutral. And if we really step back a lot of times and someone, our alter ego said to us, what's happening for you right now? It'd be like, I just had a horrible conversation with my boss, or I don't like these budget cuts, or I feel pressured to sell a house today, whatever it is, a lot of times that's driving our anxiety and we misinterpret our anxiety for, or want to kind of calm and soothe it, right, with food. And so we might start eating there. When we're full, literally, if we're again eating 15 or 20 minutes for lunch or dinner, we should be feeling a little distension into our belt, which signals back into the brain. Those nerve endings literally signal back that we're arriving and we're about done. You have to really solidly eat 15 to 20 minutes most of your main meals to recover that. But then you start like, oh, that's what's happening, and I'm not freaked out by it. It's natural. It's to be expected, right? So what we do in order to reset the body's signals is pretty simple. We ask people to eat something, whether it's a meal or a snack, every 3.5 to 4 hours. And literally in my work, I have them set a timer, because what happens a lot of times is when we get out to the 5th and 6th hour and don't respond with food, our body just blunts out. Like we might be screaming for a minute for food, and when it doesn't come, it just blunts out. And we miss a window to give ourselves sustenance, to give ourselves fuel, right? Anybody been there before where you just feel, yeah, like, oh, now it's way past, I'll just go to the next meal, or I'll just wait for the next thing in a couple hours, right? And we probably want to break right there and have a small stack if we've really missed the window until the next meal. Questions about all that?
Relation to it all.
Yeah. Can relate. Yeah. I think really most people can, right? And if it becomes sort of habitual that we miss those timings for meals, then our body gets naturally, in fairness to our bodies, it gets confused, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't know if food is coming or going reliably, right? And so what we do first thing is we reset some of those timings. We try to really get that down. And then the hunger and fullness signals come back online, right? To have that interoceptive information, like saying, yes, it's 9 o'clock and it's breakfast time on a Saturday or something, right? It all kind of syncs up. And I have a rumbling stomach, food's on the brain, that kind
I'm
of.
honestly okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Lisa. Yeah.
I'm honestly having a hard time hearing that. Like I relate eating more often with gaining weight. I'm on like a pretty heavy track right now of losing weight
Okay.
because I've been big my whole life. I've had a pretty rough relationship with food. And
Okay.
the way that I have done it and I'm doing it is I eat twice a day. And I
Okay.
eat, you know,
Yeah. Well,
the-
twice a day, I mean, I'm not personally against it. It's, you
yeah.
know, sort of the intermittent fasting philosophy, and I could do a whole talk on that. But I think the main thing is that, you know, there's a mission to that. There's a
Yeah.
logic, right, that you're following. And you know, still, I would guess your two meals are fairly beginning and end to them, right? And that's what we're after. We're after that space in between, right? To let the body naturally get hungry again and then respond kind of on time with that nourishment.
Okay, that makes more sense. So it's about timing it out correctly
Yeah,
for whatever works
yeah.
for you.
Yeah, I have a lot of people I work with that have two meals a day, and it's kind of a little bit more of a deliberate intermittent fast around that to kind of a little bit jumpstart the body in the morning. For the majority of people I'm working with, we're doing 3 meals and actually 2 very small snacks. Only if they have a very long working day, like especially that afternoon between lunch, and they might have dinner at 7 or 8, have lunch at a more traditional time. That's way too long to go, right? So blood sugar tanks, and then they're more susceptible to that blunting or overeating. So we want to prevent that.
Mm.
Right? Because with either one, people just tend to start feeling a little bit out of control. So we want to bring that back on board. Thanks for your sharing on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Realizing that I must really confuse my body.
Yeah, it's a process of resetting. I mean, one of the most gratifying things in my work is having people who have not had a signal call me and leave me a voicemail like, I had my stomach talked, you know, my stomach talked and it had a signal that was get ready for lunch, right? Because you can come to trust that, right? Once we get that fairly defined and reliable, then that's another sense of, besides the clock, oh, it's lunchtime, the body's kind of lining up with that, right?
Right.
Yeah. So an author I really like, and I can send you some references, is Linda Craighead. She's written an appetite awareness book that I think is gold. I think it's really great on this concept of reset. Sometimes it's referred to as intuitive eating. There's some really great folks who have written about that. But Craighead has done a great job on this reset piece, based in research. Yeah. All right. Did I miss anybody?
I think you got us.
Okay, good. All right. Let's go to the next slide. All right. So, yeah, there we go. Okay. So, have people heard of either of these two people, Stephen Porges or Deb Dana? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Stephen Porges was really the originator of polyvagal theory in the body, and that Deb Dana kind of shepherded this into a number of different practices about growing this body-based awareness, these signals. broader than just hunger and fullness. And so two terms that you will hear a lot of in this field are interoception and neuroception. And so interoception is our ability, maybe you've experienced this in your meditations, where when you get right down to it and quiet out, you can be really in tune with your breathing, your pulse. You can even feel like the blood coursing through your veins, your heart working, right? But we care about this a lot because we need to use our interoceptive awareness that, all of a sudden my heart rate has taken off and I feel really anxious, to help figure out what we need to do to regulate our system and restore calm. Neuroception kind of relates to what we think of fight, flight, fright, it's the subconscious nervous system at work that's always evaluating safety, danger, threat from places and people too, right? Emotionally threatening, physically threatening. So these are kind of key concepts that we look at developing and growing in body-based awareness so that we can tend to them and figure out what they need, I mean, sometimes, this saves us. It's really working for us to keep us out of harm's way. And sometimes, right, fight, flight, freeze can overgeneralize because of past traumatic situations that we've gone through, right? And we have to kind of shrink it back down to size when it's overgeneralized. Okay, so let's do a little bit of a interoceptive meditation here. Give you a flavor for that. Great, here we go. Okay. So here we're going to kind of develop a little bit of awareness from the inside out. But I would say this is a really good example of interoceptive awareness practice. Okay, so let's just take a release breath, and with that, just kind of settle back in and invite you to close eyes completely or go to soft gaze. And as we did before, just kind of feel your feet beneath you, grounding you. And if it's more comfortable to have eyes a bit open, that's fine too, or consider closing them all the way. And I'd like you just right now to register the pace of your natural breath. Just notice the pace of your non-labored breath. I'd like you to check in with the temperature of your inhalation and then that of your exhalation. What is the temperature? Is it hot, warm, cold, cool, or neutral? As you continue to breathe in and out, notice if that shifts a bit. If it helps you to use a hand underneath your nose, which it often does, to determine the temperature in and out, go ahead and do that now. Just noticing. Letting your hand fall to your lap. Now attempt to register the temperature of your body. Notice that different areas of your body may register varying temperatures. You can place a hand around various areas if that helps you to register it a little bit better. Doing a little scan with touch and noticing the differences in temperature in different areas of your body. Moving your hand around and remembering to breathe in and out. Now place your hand over your heart. Can you feel your heartbeat? This at times can be difficult to feel, so adjust your hand if you need to. If it's not coming through clearly, just imagine how many beats your heart makes per minute. Notice how it changes. Now I'll have you carefully stand up. Stand up and take a deep breath with your arms raised overhead, in and out. As you exhale, allow your arms to swing down along your side, being careful not to hit anything behind you. Raising your arms overhead again. Take a deep breath and just let your arms swing down along your side. Do this a few times and then sit back down with your eyes closed. And sit back down with your eyes closed. And place your hand back on that same area of your heart. And again, notice any changes you may experience in your heartbeat or in your breath. Notice in what ways, if any, it may have changed. Breathing in and out. We'll now use deeper imagination, as if we can journey inside the body, like you had a scope and you could see inside. Can you imagine the inner workings of your stomach and intestinal tract? It may not seem pleasant to imagine this, but imagining this is another way to get to know your body. Can you feel or imagine if there is any movement happening inside your stomach? Is there any pain or discomfort? Does your stomach feel full or empty? Can you hear any sounds it may be making right now? So you take a breath in and out. This next step requires even deeper imagination. Can you imagine how your blood flows? See if you can imagine the flow starting in the center of your body and extending outward into all regions of your body, your arms, your legs, hands, and feet, and returning to your heart, imagining your blood flowing freely throughout your veins and arteries. Each time you breathe in and out, allow yourself to be immersed in this deep imagination of the internal workings of your body, and to connect to a whole new curiosity about it, like an investigator of your own internal system. As you breathe in and out several times, slowly come back to your feet, to your grounding. Feel your feet pushing slightly on the ground, noticing up into your ankles and your legs, into your seat and up into your spine. Exhaling deeply, bringing your consciousness back to your seat, elongating your spine, and exhaling. Take a minute to collect your noticings And softly open your eyes and write those noticings in your notebook. What did you notice from this experience? What does your body have to say of this? What might you have noticed that you didn't sense before? What may have been uncomfortable that you moved through? What was surprising? All right. When you're ready, come on back and let's unpack this a little bit. What was this like for you? Anybody can jump in.
There was a lot in that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot. There was,
A lot of layers. Yeah.
say it again,
A lot of layers.
a lot of layers. There was like, now it's cool. This was warm before, it's cool now. This was cool, this was warm. Just different places in my body had lots of different temperatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Both sides of your hand. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it was difficult for me to place awareness in my stomach.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I liked the exercise of just moving our arms and letting go, like getting some flow going on is what that felt like for me.
Yeah.
And then there was like a cramping in my stomach that surprised me.
Okay.
As what, 3 minutes ago, I was like neutral, no craving, no discomfort, no whatever.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Good noticing. A
Many
lot of different parts to that noticing. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did other people experience?
Do you want to share, Laura?
I was having trouble. I would just notified me I had a little power mode, so I was trying to figure out how to get my headset on and stay connected. I'm not too tech savvy over here.
Can
And
hear you.
you can't hear me?
Yeah.
No, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Yay. I figured it out. Um, I became very aware of how I am not aware of so many pieces of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even with just general meditation, sometimes to just stay with the meditation, I have to internally remind myself, like say words like in, out with my breathing, right? I'm so trained to focus on the breath. So when I was suddenly thinking about the way the air felt in coming in versus out, that was a whole new sensation. and putting my hand on my heart and feeling my heart beating and imagining the blood flowing to all parts, I suddenly felt more of a holistic body feeling and less of a it's pretty much, I think most of the time I am thinking like my mind is driving me and I feel it in my muscles and my chest
Mhm.
or my stomach.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I sort of had forgotten all these other parts of me. So it felt nice to kind of have a larger body awareness for me.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. And that's why kind of in these body-based practices, we work parts out whole, right? And a lot of times it's to remain curious when we hit a zone that feels like I'm not getting anything there, right? This is my whole upper chest and I'm not feeling anything, right? But to work to be kind of that equanimity that we talk about in meditation, like to back off a little bit and be neutral, because the next pass, the next round, you may experience that, right? The sensations may come on board. So that's why we kind of move in and out, right? In a body scan, it's great to circle back and do it twice, because sometimes something that felt, not as enlivened will come on board, right?
Mm.
Or something else will recede. Right? And we're just staying open to that.
Mm.
Yeah. Great. Good
Yeah,
notice.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll share.
Okay.
Um, so I was, my breath was warm and it was very calming for me, which I kind of needed that after rushing and trying to
Yeah.
multitask. Kanisi always asks what our intention is and what could be keeping us from being fully present. And I was not fully present. So that was nice to kind of, I felt like that was just a grounding thing for me. But what's interesting, whenever I stop and start any sort of just breathing or meditation or the very first thing I always notice is my heart rate. It's like the very first thing I go to, which is so interesting because I know it's always the breath that meditation tries to go to, and it's not, I have to get myself there because I always notice my heart rate first. So,
Interesting.
I know it is,
Yeah.
but I always just like try to slow that down because usually I'm in a hurry or something.
Mhm.
And then when we started going into the stomach, um, what kind of got me at when we're doing a probe, I have this area like under my rib that's been bothering me lately that I probably need to go get looked
Mm.
at. And when you were like do a probe inside, it started giving me like anxiety. And I kind of didn't want to go there because I was
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to see it. And then I was like, I'm putting myself, it it could just be a pulled muscle. I don't know what it is, but I'm just showing what like things that were coming up as I was like moving to different areas in my body.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And
Sometimes we do kind of put a placeholder there, right?
mm-hmm.
It's going to get some attention and I'll move around to some other parts and that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because we want to not also end up being triggered or overly activated, right? So that's why sometimes
Right.
we, reground. We might do that in
Mm-hmm.
and out that Laura mentioned to kind of reset,
Mm-hmm.
reground.
Mm-hmm.
If we lose our place in a meditation, those things can be really helpful. But also if we notice something's getting too intense emotionally or physically,
Mm-hmm.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
back off. Maybe we come back to it, maybe we don't. Maybe it's a placeholder.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Good. Thanks for that sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sandra? I don't know if you got a chance. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna pass on sharing for this one.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, all right. So a couple other things and just going to, I'm gonna do one quick exercise with you, and then we're gonna talk about, balance is gonna be our theme, but I'm gonna have you grab another piece of paper. And you're gonna have to indulge me for a minute on this one, in how it relates. But I'd like you to just get out two pieces of paper, or if one side is still empty, just a double-sided piece of paper. And I'd like you to draw a fairly big circle, on that piece of paper. And yeah, and I'm gonna have Denise pull up the next slide. It says, hey, where are you at? Yeah, I think it's a couple after that, maybe. Yeah, maybe the next one. There we go. Yeah. So I'm gonna have you assign pieces on your pie that correspond to the importance these days, currently, that you're putting on these various things in your life. So if you're in a partnership, family, friends, spirituality, work, school, you could divide those up if you want. Movement, exercise, hobbies, weight, shape, and appearance. If you can just assign, a piece to the pie, like how big that is that a third? Is that 10%? Just kind of put those on there. And if I've missed anything, that's the ... You go ahead and put it on your pie if it's important to you currently. And there's no judgment. I mean, maybe something that previously was, 30% is now 10. That's okay. Okay, and now I'm gonna have you flip it over. And on the other side, make a circle and assign pieces to the pie of where you'd like to be in 6 months. What would you like this pie to look like in 6 months? Would it be the same or would it be different? Would the slices be bigger or smaller? Maybe just jot a note if there are any surprises in doing this. So if anybody's willing to share, I mean, this is an exercise about balance, right? And assessing our world for balance. And we can quickly see when we get absorbed with one thing that oftentimes others tend to shrink in size in terms of pieces of the pie. And that may not sync with our values or desires, what gives us more balance in life. And this is fundamental as we think about our relationship with food and body, right? Because we can often get so centered on those things that relationships are not getting their attention, or we can notice that we're putting very little attention on moving our bodies, right? So this is a quick raise awareness of where we're at, what we feel satisfied with, and what aligns, and where we need to kind of work for greater balance to restore our wheel. So what stood out to people as an area that you feel like you maybe need to shift on a little bit?
Movement. Well, I defend what I call school and spirituality. I defend those like they're gonna take up a giant piece and they need to.
Yeah, they're your anchors. Yeah. Yeah. So you want to see them continue to be a big part of your pie.
I defend those fiercely, but I'm wondering what it's doing to the other things.
Well, and I think also it's like, and when they're not a big part of your pie, then what happens too, right?
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
But it does raise the issue of like, while we develop those anchors, we have to still kind of water the garden over here, right? Those relationships, those other
Right.
pieces, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, so this is one of the areas that we do a lot of work on in eating disorders and disordered eating work, because often this wheel, gets out of whack. And because there's a struggle with eating or food or body, that can become very central. And we need to make sure that the whole pie is pretty balanced so you can source other things about yourself, right? About your self-worth, right? That becomes really important. Other things that people notice that they'd kind of like to shift in the next 6 months to see more of.
I'll share. Or Sandra, are you going to share? You go first.
No, it's okay.
You
For it.
go. Okay.
Oh, sure. I was gonna say I want to add hobbies in there. I realized I got 5 things and 3 of them take up most of everything.
Okay, yeah.
Um, uh, pretty much work, exercise, and weight are like my main things I'm focusing on. Then I have family and friends is 5%, and it's like, um, yeah. So just slightly eye opening. Yeah, maybe I should try to have more fun.
Yeah. And I think this just can quickly kind of point out, I remember one time, like, I got a flat tire, right? It's all work, all work, all work. And yeah, just noticing, okay, these other things need attention, and they need attention for us too, not only for the other people in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What were you going to say, Wendy?
I was going to say, I had 2 things that kind of like took up half of my circle, and everything else stayed this similar. So then like the other half had all the things.
Okay.
But I would like to, in 6 months, have more the spirituality expanded a little more. I do work as a hospice volunteer, end of life doula, and I put that in my spirituality. That's what I was thinking of when I was thinking spirituality, because there's some classes that I want to take that explores like more spiritual aspects of the process of death that I want to get more involved, to get learn more about.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm hoping to expand more.
Yeah. Great. Good. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. And how about you, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do not have a balanced pie. The part that consumes the largest space is work, and that is something I have been needing to address for a while. I would like to also increase the spirituality part of my life, which feels really empowering to come to these sessions because that feels like an intentional move in that direction for me. Exercise for me is it's just something I have to do so that I don't develop any problems. So that feels pretty okay where I have that. But I don't give enough time to my family, to my friends, to my partnership. I think sometimes I place that I feel I can get stuff done and I feel okay and I feel good and I have like not a sense of mastery, but a sense of not a sense of control either, but is work. And that's where I used to have a lot of the food and exercise and weight issues, right? So it's almost like a functioning alcoholic, but it's a functioning workaholic. And so to kind of move that and balance my pie better. I've never had it presented to me this way, but it's really insightful and helpful to think of having other areas that are improving self-worth, I guess, so that I'm not tripping up and on a repeat record here, which I think I am.
Yeah. And I gotta say, it's really helpful when work's not going great. Like some of these other areas are going great, or when spirituality's off, the hobbies are intact, or, right? I mean, it just helps us to source other areas about ourselves, right? As well.
That totally
So,
makes sense. That
does it make
resonates.
sense? Yeah, does it make sense why we would kind of start here in eating? Because
Yeah.
those are disorders, so to speak, of a desire for connection with other people too.
Mm-hmm.
So the last slide I'm going to leave you with is, there are two more, but this one I'm going to just spend a minute on because in interest of time, are some unhelpful food rules. We have tons of food rules, and I could do a whole talk just on this. But going into the holidays coming up, the high holiday season, right? I would like you to examine, just mindfully notice as you go into it, if you have any judgments about good or bad foods. And yes, there's a difference between a tangerine and a Twinkie in terms of nutritional value. Like my head's not in the sand about that, right? But we can kind of set up our landscape to have a lot of landmines in it around these food rules so that it becomes all or nothing, right? We can make food very exotic and novel because we don't get to practice it and we haven't kept it legal. And when we change a dynamic and really restrict foods or restrict food groups, oftentimes overeating happens, right? There's a desire to have it and then to not be able to contain it. So we want to keep foods legal. We want to practice them all in moderation, but just notice if there are rules about Thanksgiving, if there are rules about how we do food and what they are. Like a lot of people my age grew up with parents, Depression era grandparents that are like, the clean plate club. Well, that's a food rule, right? I don't think it really serves us. We get to decide when we're full, right? Even if there's a little bit of plate, food that we have to put away or maybe even waste, we have to go with what makes sense in our bodies. I talked about not going more than 4 hours. I really like people to look at that. Like what happens, where's your sweet spot on when you get hangry and your blood sugar drops? Just notice that in your body. notice what happens and how we tax our vital organs when we restrict for a long time. So just if there are any rigid food rules that you have, just observe them with compassion, right? And then try to make a shift. And this last slide is about the 3 tenets of self-compassion, right? It's coming back always to self-kindness and our learning and our noticings, to our common humanity, and using the tool of mindfulness to observe and to make changes, right? I so appreciate your sharing tonight. A lot of really profound sharing about your own journey and experiences, and even these noticings in these guided somatic practices. Yeah. So thank you.
Diane, this was perfect for you to do this with our metaverse because
Thank
you're so gentle. And I do think that we're going to have many more people watch this not live than we're willing to come live
Okay.
and to talk and
Yeah.
to interact around a very, very sensitive subject.
Very tender. Yeah. And I'm available. I put all my contact information on that first slide that, if any of you want to talk more about yourselves or someone, I'm always open for that.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
just,
great.
to consult, no fee, just to talk about resources or books or wanting more of this or that, or, talking about movies, whatever. I'm open to it. So.
This was a really neat, refreshing way to look at it and approach it and to feel it. I do feel the more that, well, I don't know if Diane, I didn't tell you, but Rachel was kind of saying, so how many days in a row have you meditated? Kind of, I took it like a little challenge. And so I'm on 65 right now. And it's really different to be consistent. And as I'm experiencing a consistency with meditation, I'm noticing my body thinking less and feeling more, trusting what I'm feeling and not needing to overanalyze everything. And so I'm thinking if I were to get familiar more with these food practices, that I would allow myself to feel more with what's going on with my body and what it needs rather than overthink it.
It's true. It's
So
true.
I really,
Yeah.
really appreciate these exercises and your amazing expertise and heart.
Sure.
Heart just comes so shining through everything you do that I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
again, I'm inspired by your group. Before you all came on, I was telling Denise, just watching, the consistency of all of you getting together and the people you've invited in to talk. It's tremendous what you're growing.
Thank you for being part.
Somebody was just saying structure helps, right? Like the meeting weekly, it really,
Yeah.
it helps. Mhm.
There's my consistency with it, with my little pie. Like, please, someone's okay.
Yeah, but Denise, that was a great testament to the work, right? That, repeated meditation, we all know it does something. And, I've heard it said, like, we're moving state to trait, right? Like the state of being in meditation and then developing the traits of like being able to be better observers in the world, more emotionally regulated, like taking it out with them, right? Is one of the goals for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You're just wonderful. Thank you. Would you mind if I do a dedication?
I would love it. Thank you.
I want to acknowledge that we have again come together with a very, very positive intention and one that is willing to see the sides of us, or at least explore the sides of us that maybe are not so familiar, or we're not so aware of, or that we might have realized have caused us some struggle. And And I think that it feels to me, and I hope it feels to you, like they say the answer is to go, is through what causes that fear for us. And we can't go through that fear to the other side if we're not willing to look at it. And so I feel like what we did tonight was very brave and very filled with merit, that the intention was so good. And so I wish that all of the merit that all of us did in holding each other through a sensitive subject, and Diane, you guiding us through a very sensitive subject so sensitively, I hope that the merit from that immediately comes through us and then unselfishly goes straight out to people who are really suffering with this subject and others. May they have our merit. May they feel that there are options and there's help, and that connection and community can really help. So thank you. I'd like to dedicate all of this to go out to all beings so that none of us suffers. Thank you for joining us again.